John and Mary McCarthy always had a simple life. They were born in a small town in the interior of the United States, in farming families. From an early age, they learned the value of hard work. John helped his father in the field since he was 8 years old, while Mary helped her mother with household chores and taking care of her younger siblings. At 20 years old, John and Mary got married and started a family. The first years were difficult, but the love between them was strong enough to overcome any obstacle. John worked as a farmer planting corn and wheat, and Mary took care of the house, raising chickens and cultivating a small vegetable garden to help with expenses. The children started arriving, and with each new child, the house was filled with joy and challenges. The first child, Michael, was born with the same determined spirit as his father. From a young age, he showed ambition, always helping John in the field and dreaming of becoming a lawyer. Michael was a natural leader, taking care of his siblings and organizing small play sessions that simulated trials and debates. The second child, Jessica, was sensitive and artistic. From an early age, she showed talent for painting and music. She spent hours drawing at the kitchen table or playing the old family piano that Mary had inherited from her grandmother. Jessica had a kind heart and was always ready to comfort her siblings when something went wrong. David, the third child, was curious and intelligent. From a young age, he showed interest in science and technology. He took apart toys to understand how they worked and spent hours reading science books from the small town library. David dreamed of becoming an engineer and creating inventions that could improve people's lives. Emily, the youngest biological child, was sweet and caring. Always concerned about others' well-being, she helped Mary with household chores and took care of her younger siblings. Emily wanted to be a nurse, inspired by the stories Mary told about her grandmother, who had been a midwife in the town. When Emily was 3 years old, John and Mary decided to adopt a baby that had been abandoned at the local church door. The baby, whom they named Peter, was an unexpected blessing. Peter was a cheerful and lively boy, always with a smile on his face. From the beginning, John and Mary treated Peter as if he were one of their own, but the siblings didn't always see him that way. With 5 children to feed and care for, life on the farm was a constant battle against hardships. But despite the challenges, the McCarthy house was always full of laughter and love. The years passed, and the daily struggle to support the family was immense. John worked from sunrise to sunset, often without eating, to ensure his children had something to put on their plates. He was a farmer, carpenter, and did all kinds of work that came his way. Mary, with the same strength and dedication, helped in every way she could, doing odd jobs and taking care of the children. Life on the farm was hard, and money was always scarce. Clothes were mended countless times, and meals were simple, often consisting only of bread and soup. Even so, John and Mary never let their children lack the essentials. The sacrifice was constant, but always done with love and hope for a better future for the children. Michael, the oldest, began to show dissatisfaction with the situation from an early age. Ambitious and determined to escape that difficult life, he often complained about the lack of resources and the limitations imposed by poverty. "Why do we have to live like this, Dad? It's not fair," he would say, often with a tone of frustration. Jessica, sensitive and artistic, also felt the weight of the difficulties. She dreamed of having quality painting supplies and a tuned piano, but she knew these were luxuries the family couldn't afford. "I just wish I had a little more color in my life, Mum," she confessed sadly. David, with his curiosity and intelligence, often felt frustrated by not having access to books and tools that could fuel his passion for science. "If I had a good chemistry kit, I could do so many things," he would comment with a mix of hope and disappointment. Emily, the youngest biological child, perhaps complained the least, but still felt the limitations imposed by simple life. She dreamed of becoming a nurse, but knew the path to achieving that dream would be full of obstacles. On the other hand, Peter, the adopted child, always showed deep gratitude and concern for the family. From a young age, he noticed his parents' sacrifices and tried to help in every way possible. "Dad, don't worry about me, I'm fine. I want to help in the field today," Peter would say, always ready to lighten John's burden. The other children, however, often saw Peter as a reminder of the difficulties they faced. "Why does he always want to help so much? It seems like he wants to be the favorite," Michael would comment with disdain. Jessica sometimes felt jealous of the attention Peter received for his altruistic attitude. "He's just trying to make us look bad," she would murmur to David, who would silently agree. Despite the tensions and dissatisfaction, John and Mary continued to fight, believing that one day their children would have a better life. They sacrificed their own dreams and comforts to ensure their children had a chance to study and grow. And despite the difficulties, the love and family unity kept everyone going, facing each new challenge with courage and determination. The years passed, and the sacrifices John and Mary made to keep the family together and ensure their children's education were immense. All were encouraged to study, including Peter, who always felt pressured to prove his worth to his siblings. Many times John and Mary went through hardships, working non-stop and often going without food to ensure their children had what they needed. Michael finally got a scholarship and went to law school. On the day he left, there was an awkward silence between him and Peter. Michael speaks. "Take good care of our parents, Peter. You don't have much else to do around here, do you?" Peter lowered his head, feeling the weight of his brother's words. He knew that to Michael, his life on the farm was a symbol of the limitations he wanted to overcome. Jessica was next to leave home. She got into an art school in another city. Before leaving, she had an honest conversation with Peter. Jessica speaks. "Peter, I hope you find something you love to do, just like I found. Don't let anyone tell you that you can't." Jessica was always kinder to Peter, but he still felt the division between them, as if she was rooting for him from a distance without really understanding what he was going through. David, always the most critical, was accepted into a prestigious science program. At the farewell, his comment was straightforward and blunt. David speaks. "Enjoy the simple life, Peter. Maybe that's all you really need." David was never cruel, but his lack of sensitivity and the way he saw Peter as someone without great ambitions always hurt. Emily, the youngest, was still young, but already showing her desire to pursue a nursing career. Always affectionate, she hugged Peter before leaving for college. Emily speaks. "I love you, Peter. Promise me you'll never give up on being happy." Peter felt a special bond with Emily, the only one who seemed to understand his heart and concerns. After 5 years, Peter was still working tirelessly on the farm, helping his parents, John and Mary, with all the daily tasks. He took on many responsibilities, from planting to harvesting, as well as caring for the animals and domestic needs. Peter's dedication was evident, and he did everything with love and gratitude for the parents who took him in. Meanwhile, his siblings were living their own lives, each on their personal and professional journey. Michael, now a successful lawyer in a big city, rarely came home. His work demanded a lot from him, and he was fully immersed in his world of courts and negotiations. Jessica, the sensitive artist, was flourishing in a vibrant artistic community. She participated in exhibitions and gained recognition for her paintings. Her letters home were sporadic and focused mainly on her achievements and artistic experiences. David, with his brilliant and curious mind, was working in a cutting-edge research lab. He was involved in innovative projects that could change the world, and his dedication to science kept him away from the farm and family. Emily, the youngest, was finishing her nursing studies and already working in a hospital. She still sent letters regularly, expressing her love and concern for her parents and Peter. But her visits were rare due to her intense workload and studies. For Peter, the farm and his parents were everything. He found comfort and purpose in his daily responsibilities, even if it meant sacrificing his ambitions. The absence of his siblings was felt, but he remained steadfast, determined to care for John and Mary with all his heart. Even with all his dedication to the farm and his parents, Peter always dreamed of learning more and improving his family's life. So, when an unexpected opportunity arose, he could hardly believe it. Peter was offered an agricultural management course in another state, a unique chance to learn new techniques and knowledge that could revolutionize the farm. Peter felt torn. The idea of leaving his parents, even temporarily, caused him great concern. But John and Mary, always thinking about their adoptive son's future, encouraged him to accept the offer. John speaks. "Peter, this is a great opportunity for you. We'll be fine here. Your Aunt Margaret has already agreed to come help us while you're away. Mary speaks. We want you to go, dear. This course could change our lives. We trust you. Peter, still hesitant, looked at his parents. He knew how much they needed him, but he also recognized the importance of this opportunity. Peter speaks. Are you sure? I don't want to leave you. John speaks. We're sure, son. Go and take advantage of this chance. We'll be fine. With a heavy but determined heart, Peter decided to accept the course. His Aunt Margaret, a strong and experienced woman, arrived at the farm to care for John and Mary while he was away. Peter knew it was the right decision, but the farewell was filled with emotions. Mary speaks. Take care, my son. We're very proud of you. John speaks. Come back with all the knowledge you can. We'll miss you, but we know it's best for all of us. With these words of encouragement and love, Peter set off on a new journey, determined to make all the effort and sacrifice worthwhile. Peter was excelling in his agricultural management course. He was learning everything about advanced farming techniques, livestock management, and technological innovations to improve farm productivity. His professors recognized his talent and dedication, often praising his work and bright forecasts. Professor speaks. Peter, you have a bright future. Your ideas can really transform any farm. Meanwhile, his siblings were also thriving. Michael had become a respected lawyer, winning important cases and building a solid reputation. Jessica was increasingly recognized in the art world, her paintings selling for high prices in prestigious galleries. David was leading an innovative project that promised to change the course of science, while Emily was on her way to becoming a head nurse at the hospital where she worked. Everything seemed to be going well for the McCarthy family. Peter, even from afar, kept in frequent contact with his parents and received updates from his Aunt Margaret on how they were doing. He missed them, but knew he was doing the right thing. However, a sense of unease lingered in the air. Something was about to change. During one of his weekly calls, Peter noticed his Aunt Margaret's voice sounded different, more tense than usual. Peter speaks. Aunt Margaret, is everything okay there? Aunt Margaret speaks. We're fine, Peter. Your parents miss you, but we're managing. But there was something in her tone that didn't fully convince him. He tried to push away the worry, focusing on his studies and the dream of returning to the farm with all the knowledge he was gaining. His siblings, amid the success of their own lives, also began to feel a slight disconnect. Small messages and updates among them suggested that something was not quite right. Michael speaks. Jessica, have you heard anything strange about our parents? I feel like there's something they're not telling us. Jessica speaks. David mentioned that Aunt Margaret seemed worried, but he didn't go into detail. Maybe we should investigate further. The McCarthys were about to face an unexpected challenge that would change their lives forever. Something that would force them all to reevaluate their priorities and the importance of family. The storm was forming on the horizon, and none of them were really prepared for what was to come. Suddenly, on a beautiful day, while Peter was in a class about sustainable livestock management, his phone started vibrating insistently. He saw it was his Aunt Margaret, and with a heavy premonition, asked the professor for permission and went out to answer the call. Peter speaks. Aunt Margaret, what happened? Is everything okay? Aunt Margaret's voice was trembling and worried. Aunt Margaret speaks. Peter, I'm sorry to bother you like this, but things have gotten much worse here. Your mother is very sick, and your father, he is showing early signs of Alzheimer's. It's been very difficult for me to handle everything alone. Peter felt a knot form in his stomach. He knew something was wrong, but had no idea the situation was so serious. He thanked Aunt Margaret and promised to return home as soon as possible. Immediately after hanging up, he began calling his siblings. The first call was to Michael, who was in an important meeting. Peter speaks. Michael, we need to go home. Mum is very sick and Dad is showing signs of Alzheimer's. Aunt Margaret can't handle it alone anymore. There was a pause on the other end of the line, followed by a deep sigh. Michael speaks. I'll do what I can to leave here as soon as possible, Peter. See you at home. The next call was to Jessica, who was in the middle of an art exhibition. Peter speaks. Jessica, we need to go home. Mum is very sick and Dad needs special care. Jessica, always sensitive, started crying. Jessica speaks. "I'll catch the first flight. See you soon, Peter." David was the third to be contacted. He was in an important presentation of his project. Peter speaks. "David, we need to go home. It's urgent. Mum is very sick and Dad needs us." David, always the pragmatic one, responded with determination. David speaks. "I'll wrap things up here and be on my way. See you at home." Finally, he called Emily, who was at the hospital. Peter speaks. "Emily, it's Peter. Mum is very sick and Dad has Alzheimer's. Aunt Margaret needs our help." Emily, with her caring nature, responded immediately. Emily speaks. "I'm coming. I'll request leave from work. I'll be home as soon as possible." Peter felt a mixture of relief and anxiety. He knew the coming days would be difficult, but the family was reuniting. With his usual determination, he started packing his things, ready to face the challenge that awaited him at home. Everyone's life was about to change drastically, and they would need to unite like never before to overcome what was coming. After 4 days, all the siblings were finally reunited at the farm. The situation was even worse than they had imagined. John was visibly weakened, Alzheimer's disease advancing rapidly, while Mary was bedridden, barely able to speak. Aunt Margaret was exhausted, the weight of caring for both elderly parents starting to affect her own health. The siblings gathered in the living room to discuss what to do. The atmosphere was charged with tension and concern. Michael, always the most pragmatic, started the conversation. Michael speaks. "We've all seen the situation. The care that Mum and Dad need is more than Aunt Margaret can offer. We need to find a practical solution." Jessica, with tears in her eyes, nodded. Jessica speaks. "I hate to say it, but maybe the best option is a nursing home. There they'll have medical care and constant attention." David, always logical, agreed. David speaks. "It's true, none of us can stay here and take care of them full time. We have our own families and jobs. We need to be realistic." Emily, though reluctant, also found herself inclined to agree. Emily speaks. "I know it seems like the only practical solution. I feel terrible, but I don't see another way out." Peter, who had been silent until then, could no longer contain himself. He stood up, with revolt clearly stamped on his face. Peter speaks. "You're talking about our parents. They sacrificed everything for us, and now you want to abandon them in a nursing home. That's unfair and inhumane." Michael tried to calm Peter. Michael speaks. "Peter, we understand your feelings, but we have to think about their quality of life. In a nursing home, they'll have professional care." Peter speaks. "I refuse to accept that. They need us, the family, not strangers." Jessica, crying, tried to explain her position. Jessica speaks. "Peter, if there were another way, I'd be the first to support it. But we're all caught up in our responsibilities." David, losing patience, was more direct. David speaks. "Peter, it's a tough decision but necessary. You can't take care of them alone. None of us can." Emily, with a broken heart, murmured. Emily speaks. "Peter, please understand. We don't want to do this, but it seems like the only option." Peter, with his eyes burning with tears, realized he was in the minority. He felt a mixture of despair and helplessness. With one last attempt, he looked at his siblings. Peter speaks. "They deserve more than this. I'll do whatever it takes to take care of them. Please reconsider." Michael shook his head sadly. Michael speaks. "Peter, it's not a matter of not wanting to. It's a matter of not being able to. The decision is made." Peter, defeated, left the room, feeling betrayed and powerless. The pain of knowing his parents would be placed in a nursing home despite all his efforts was overwhelming. The decision was made and he had no power to change it. His parents' fate was now out of his hands, and he would have to find a way to cope with it. With nothing else to do, Peter found himself forced to accept his siblings' decision. John and Mary were taken to a nursing home, a place that promised constant medical care and a safe environment. The farewell was painful, with Peter feeling helpless as he watched his parents leave the farm they loved so much. The siblings returned to their lives. Michael resumed his complex negotiations and legal disputes. Jessica immersed herself in her exhibitions and artistic projects. David continued to advance his scientific research, and Emily returned to the hospital, caring for her patients with dedication. Through social media, Peter saw them all enjoying social events, parties, and happy moments with their own families. Each photo, Each post of smiles and achievements felt like a stab in Peter's heart. He felt increasingly isolated and sad. The weight of the decision haunted him, and he missed his parents deeply. He knew he couldn't continue like this, that he needed to do something to change the situation. Determined to make a difference, Peter decided to focus even more on his studies. He dedicated himself intensely to the agricultural management course, absorbing all the knowledge he could. His grades improved, and he began to stand out even more, catching the attention of his professors and classmates. Peter, to himself, speaks, "I will become the best I can be. I will learn everything about farms, livestock, and agricultural management. And when I return, I will bring my parents back home." With this resolve, Peter began to study with renewed intensity. He spent hours in the library, attended all available seminars and workshops, and sought internships and practical experiences that could enrich his learning. He knew the path would be long and arduous, but his love for his parents and desire to see them back on the farm gave him strength. While his siblings continued their seemingly perfect lives, Peter was charting a plan for the future. He was determined to prove to everyone that there was a better way, a way to care for the family without abandoning them. And so, he moved forward, studying and preparing for the day he could return home and make a difference. A year had passed since John and Mary were taken to the nursing home. Peter continued his studies with determination, focused on learning everything he could about agricultural management. His efforts did not go unnoticed. He stood out as one of the best students in his class. Meanwhile, the McCarthy farm remained in a sort of limbo maintained by Aunt Margaret, and the little that Peter could do from afar. Then one day Aunt Margaret contacted the siblings, bringing news that would change everything. Aunt Margaret, in a call, speaks, "Michael, Jessica, David, Emily, I need to talk to you urgently. I received a purchase offer for the farm. The buyer is willing to pay a good price, but you need to decide whether to sell or not. We need to meet in 2 days to make this decision." The news was a shock to everyone. The farm, which had been home and the foundation of so many memories, was now at stake. Each of the siblings knew that this meeting would be crucial. Michael, always practical, saw the sale as a financial opportunity. Michael, thinking, speaks, "This money could help pay for our parents' care and still provide financial comfort for all of us." Jessica, emotionally tied to the farm, was conflicted. Jessica, thinking, speaks, "The farm is part of who we are. Selling it would be like selling part of our history." David, with his scientific perspective, saw the logic in the sale. David, thinking, speaks, "We can use the money to invest in something more sustainable and ensure our parents get the best care possible." Emily, with her caring heart, was torn between reason and sentiment. Emily, thinking, speaks, "I want the best for our parents, but the farm is where we grew up, where we have so many memories." And Peter, feeling a tightness in his chest, just agreed to meet with everyone. The siblings agreed to meet at the farm in 2 days. The tension was high, and everyone knew this decision could change the family's future forever. Each was immersed in their thoughts, pondering what the best path forward would be. On the scheduled day, they all gathered in the living room of the old house. The walls seemed to echo with memories of laughter and love, now silent in the face of the gravity of the upcoming decision. In the living room of the old farmhouse, the McCarthy siblings were gathered. The atmosphere was charged with tension and expectation. The buyer's lawyer, an elegant and professional man, entered the room with a folder full of documents. Lawyer speaks. "Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're well. I have here a purchase offer for the McCarthy farm. The amount is considerable, and I believe you'll all be satisfied." The siblings exchanged curious and anxious looks. The lawyer opened the folder and presented the offer. The amount was much higher than expected, immediately capturing everyone's attention. Michael speaks. "This amount is really impressive. It could help us a lot with the nursing home costs and still leave plenty." Jessica speaks. "Yes, it's a very generous amount. We could use the money to improve our parents' quality of life." David speaks. "I agree. This is an opportunity we can't miss." Emily speaks. "This could give us peace of mind, knowing our parents are well cared for." However, Peter remained silent. His heart tightened at the thought of letting go of the farm that meant so much to him and his parents. However, he knew he was in the minority and didn't want to cause more conflict. Lawyer speaks. If everyone agrees, please sign here. One by one, the siblings signed the documents. They were happy and relieved, feeling the decision made was the best for the family. When it was Peter's turn, he took the pen, but instead of signing, he stood up before putting his name on the paper. Peter speaks. I can't sign this. The siblings looked at him, surprised and curious. Michael speaks. Peter, what's wrong? Is everything okay? Peter speaks. I need to say something before any decision. This farm means a lot to me, to us. And I am the buyer. A profound silence fell over the room. The siblings looked at Peter, incredulous and surprised. Jessica speaks. You... What? Peter took a deep breath, gathering the courage to explain. Peter speaks. I worked hard and dedicated myself to my studies. I was appointed director of an agricultural company thanks to my good grades and performance. I managed to save money, and with the company's help, I made the offer for the farm. I couldn't let this place be sold to someone else. This land is our legacy. Instead of gratitude, Peter's revelation sparked a wave of anger among the siblings. Michael speaks. So that was it? You always had an interest in the land. You betrayed us. Jessica speaks. How could you do this without telling us anything? It seems you were always scheming behind our backs. David speaks. This is unacceptable, Peter. You acted as if you were the only one who cared about this farm. Emily speaks. I thought you were different, Peter. But now I see I was wrong. Peter was paralyzed by his siblings' reaction. He never imagined his decision would be interpreted this way. Peter speaks. I just wanted to save the farm. I thought I was doing the best for all of us. But his words didn't reach his siblings, who stood up and left, furious and disappointed. Michael speaks. We're leaving. Good luck with your precious farm, Peter. One by one, the siblings left, leaving Peter alone in the room, surrounded by the weight of his decisions and the loneliness of his conviction. He looked around, feeling the silence and the absence of his siblings. The farm he loved so much was now his responsibility, but the cost of that responsibility seemed too high. Peter stood there in silence, reflecting on the path he had chosen and the consequences of his actions. Peter managed to gather all the resources and knowledge necessary to transform the McCarthy farm into an example of modernity and efficiency. With that, he brought his parents back from the nursing home to the farm. John and Mary were moved to see the improvements and Peter's dedication. John speaks. We are very proud of you, Peter. You did an amazing job here. Mary speaks. It's wonderful to be back home, dear. Thank you for everything. As Peter worked tirelessly on the farm, his siblings began to drift apart. Michael was fully immersed in his career as a lawyer in the city. Jessica, increasingly recognized in the art world, focused on her exhibitions and artistic projects. David, with his scientific work, dedicated himself to projects that kept him away from home. Emily, now a head nurse, was involved with her profession at the hospital. The siblings rarely visited the farm, and communication between them and Peter became increasingly sporadic. Peter felt the absence of his siblings, but dedicated himself entirely to taking care of his parents and the farm's progress. Over time, John and Mary's health began to improve. Peter's love and care, along with the familiar environment of the farm, brought new energy to his parents. Noticing the recovery, the siblings decided to visit the farm to see their parents and Peter's work. During the visit, there was growing tension among the siblings. Michael, Jessica, David, and Emily gathered to discuss the changes in the farm's finances, resulting in an intense fight. Michael speaks. Peter, you think you know what's best for the farm, but we also have a say. Peter speaks. I did all this for our parents and our family. Where were you when I needed help? Jessica speaks. Peter, we all have our responsibilities. It's not fair to throw this in our faces. David speaks. You always act as if you were the only one who cared. That's not true. Emily speaks. Please stop fighting. This isn't helping anything. The argument became more heated, with each sibling defending their point of view. The tension reached its peak when, late at night, Peter was alone in the living room and one of the siblings approached him threateningly. Michael, with anger in his eyes, held a knife, speaks. "You think you can make all the decisions alone, Peter? I'm going to end this now." Everyone was nervous and tense. John and Mary, hearing the commotion, quickly came downstairs. John speaks. "What's going on here? Michael, put that knife down immediately." Mary speaks. "Please stop this. We are a family." The tension in the air was palpable. Everyone was nervous and on the verge of a breakdown. Michael did not immediately lower the knife, and the fight continued, with harsh words exchanged and feelings of betrayal and hurt coming to the surface. Peter speaks. "Michael, this isn't about the farm, it's about our relationship, our family. Do you really want this to end this way?" Jessica and David, seeing the gravity of the situation, tried to intervene, but the fight had already escalated out of control. The tension in the room was unbearable, and the fight seemed to be out of control. Michael still held the knife, and Peter, with eyes full of determination, faced his brother. Jessica and David tried to intervene, while Emily cried, pleading for peace. Suddenly John, with a strength that seemed impossible for someone in his condition, entered the room and shouted, making everyone freeze. John speaks. "Enough!" Everyone turned to see John, who positioned himself in the middle of the room with eyes full of anger and disappointment. His voice was firm and full of authority. John speaks. "You are all my children, and your mother and I raised you with much sacrifice. Is this how you repay us?" He pointed to Michael, Jessica, David, and Emily one by one, with a trembling finger. John speaks. "You four put us in a nursing home, abandoned your roots, and now dare to fight among yourselves. The only one who came to get us, who brought us back home, was Peter, the only one who is not my blood." The silence was absolute. John's words penetrated deeply into each of the siblings. John speaks. "Do you think success and career are everything in life? Do you think you can forget the family that gave you everything? It's not money or position that defines you, but the respect and love you have for each other." He looked directly into Michael's eyes, who still held the knife, now lowered, with guilt written on his face. John speaks. "Michael, violence never solves anything. The knife you held against Peter is a symbol of your own anger and frustration, but that's not the answer." Turning to Jessica, David, and Emily, he continued. John speaks. "Jessica, your art cannot flourish in a heart full of resentment. David, your science cannot thrive if you ignore the fundamentals of love and unity. Emily, how can you care for others when you can't care for your own family?" Mary, standing beside John, began to cry silently. John embraced her and with a softer but still firm voice concluded. John speaks. "Family is everything. And Peter, despite not being my blood, understood this more than any of you. He brought us back, gave us a home, and now he is trying to keep this family together." Peter, with tears in his eyes, looked at John and Mary, feeling the weight and truth of his father's words. He knew this was John's last attempt to save the family from destruction. To be continued in part 2. Much more is yet to happen.